There are some who view the body as a producer of all things disgusting. And then there are others who view the body as this fascinating self-regulating mechanism. With that being said, let's talk about sweat. No? How about perspiration? Does that sound better? Whatever you wish to call it, it is an important bodily function. Through perspiring, the body is able to cool itself. But there are aesthetic side effects, and most noticeable of these is the dreaded sweat patch. Mass-produced clothes need solutions to fit the masses, and as such, there are certain one-size-fits-all strategies that are employed. Some of those areas are around the top of the sleeve or the arm's eye, around the neck, and the slope from the neck to the shoulder. You can't walk into a shop and choose between a size 10 of this shirt with a 17-inch arm's eye compared to the same shirt, size 10, with a 19-inch arm's eye. It's just not possible. The problem with an unfitted arm's eye is that you end up with fabric that drapes away from the body, and that causes skin on skin under the arm. And skin on skin in hot weather is not really a good thing. In fact, I even wonder if part of the reason for pushing sleeves up is to push fabric under the arm. Having a smaller arm's eye that actually fits up under the arm will help to channel the sweat away from your body and help to cool you down. But it doesn't look good, does it? And it's so obvious, unless you're wearing midnight black. And generally speaking, I don't think many people wear midnight black in the middle of the summer. So what can be done? 10 years ago, I bought a bunch of craft supplies from a lady that was moving across the States. And in one of the drawers, I found a collection of dress shields, rubber-lined dress shields. When I wore my Symington Pretty Housemaid corset for 4 days doing intensive garden work in extreme heat a couple of weeks ago, one of the first things I noticed was the sweat. And it wasn't so much that the corset itself was making me hot, it was just that it was the first hot weather we'd had of the year and so my body hadn't regulated. But I was more concerned about the effect of the sweat on my corset than I was about it on my shirt. At the time, I couldn't find the dress shields that I knew I had, so at the end of one day, I came into my workroom and I traced the outline of the sweat patch on my shirt. Laugh if you want, but I figured if I could actually find out that shape, then I would have a customized size that should be able to fit in any garment of mine, and thus protecting my fabrics from exposure to sweat and the aesthetics of having that dark sweat patch under my arm. Funnily enough, when I did find the dress shields, I compared the two and they were a very close match. I shouldn't be surprised, obviously they did their market research. The size of the sweat patch that I had traced was very, very close to that of these mass-produced rubber-lined dress shields. Let's go have a look at those. These are 3 different styles of dress shields that I have from the Rand company, and they are listed as being rubber lined. And the different styles, this one here is designed to go over the arm and shoulder to hold it in place rather than being pinned to the fabric. So this is basically held in place by the wearer. Then you have this, which is designed to not protrude out under the arm quite so much. So it's designed to have a very low profile, and this spreads open to go alongside the inner of the sleeve. And then these ones here, which are just your kind of everyday dress shield designed to pin in place. And then by the Kleinitz company, we have the cap sleeve shield, which is in white. We have this one, which is a pin-in shield, and then the demi shield is simply a single piece rather than one that's folded in half like this. Now I also have this one, which was loose in the container. It doesn't have a manufacturer's stamp, but this would have been a pin-in one. And then finally, this is the pattern that I had made from my own mark, shall we say. And you can see that apart from the length of the two parts, it's very similar. So on the bodice side, now the top curvature is going to be largely dependent on the shape of your sleeve itself. So this extends beyond. Now, seeing that they have markings as far as what size it is, size 3, I think all of these are size 3. I'm going to guess there was some variation. But the sleeve side is perhaps the most different, because on this example here, it's quite short, and I obviously accumulated a lot more moisture further down the sleeve than you have on this one here. But let's look at these in some more detail. So firstly, this adjustable dress shield, and you can see the model in the picture. You can see how it's attached over the arm and the shoulder, and then she's got it pinned down to her bra or petticoat, and this is what it looks like. So you can see the rubber on the inside. You've got the elastic, which is pretty short. This one could probably use with being replaced. And then on the base side, you have this elasticated piece that would then attach to your garment. So this is quite large if you compare it to my own template. Now this is the sleeve side, and it is a fair amount larger all the way around. And then on the bodice side, again, significantly larger. But it feels like you've got a rubber side on here, and this side, it does pull away. So it's a line of rather thin cotton, I think. And then this rubber sheeting, it's been overlocked. And as far as the attachment, there's a seam on the top, but it separates from the bottom again. So the bottom is sewn in, and then the top is sewn together. They're put wrong sides in and then overlocked around the outside. So that's the adjustable dress shield. And the cap sleeve one, the rubber on this is far lighter, far thinner. Similar construction, separates fully in the middle and then is overlocked around the outside. And again, this is designed to go under your arm, so this is going to be up against your body, and then this part goes into the sleeve. So when you're wearing it, this is your body here, and it goes like that, so your arm's actually going to go through this top section here. So using this as an example, you're going to have the fabric facing toward the body, and then it spreads out at the armpit level, so this extends out just enough to provide the protection on the inside of the sleeve there. And that would pin in place. And then the smaller ones, same thing as far as construction goes. Pin in place, and it just sits alongside of the underarm seam. So there's the sleeve of your dress, you've got your body, your arm comes down this way, and it's just going to pin in there, always with the fabric side towards your body. Finally, we have the demi shield, which is quite simply half of one. So that it's a single part, there's no second part to it, and it would just be pinned in place for a sleeveless dress where your arm's going to be completely exposed on this side. This just pins to the bodice side of your dress so that no sweat marks are visible. While I wish to be very careful as pertains to copyright infringements, I did want to give you the opportunity to see at scale exactly what these dress shields are like as far as their sizing. This is a cutting board marked in inches. And I'll post a higher resolution image on my website, which will be linked in the description below. With the surge in the last number of years in the use of washable diapers or nappies, a lot of people have started making their own, and as a result, the waterproof fabric that one would buy to use as the outer layer to prevent leakages has become readily available. This is an example of PUL, which is a woven fabric. It has some stretch to it, that has a plastic lining, and this can be used as one half of the dress shield. So the side that is going to be facing the fabric can be made of this material. And then you simply will take a piece of cotton to use as your other layer. And again, the lower layer is stitched together at the underarm. The upper layer is stitched together at the underarm. Both seams are faced in, pressed, and then they are serged around or overlocked around the outside. Now, if you do not have an overlocker, you could very easily just stitch around the outside, flip it inside out, and then hand sew up the edge. So that's not a big deal. Now, how do we make one? I have my pieces placed on a double layer of fabric, and I'm doing that because I'm cutting two at the same time, one for each side of the body. And now tracing around the outside, being sure to mark the notches just so that I get the sides positioned correctly. There's a seam allowance on the top side that will be turned to the inside, but I'm not leaving a seam allowance around the outside. I will use my overlocker to do the edges on that. If you do wish to include a seam allowance to sew around and then turn it inside out when you're finished, just bear in mind that that is going to add to the bulkiness around the outside, and so it's not going to be quite as invisible as it would otherwise be. And then it is time to trace onto the PUL fabric, and you definitely don't want to pin the PUL fabric because you will end up piercing that plastic layer, and then you have a risk of moisture from your body seeping through. Now I realise obviously there will be a pin when we sew these together, so that's unavoidable. As far as cutting it out, it could be a bit tricky with the fabric moving as you are cutting. So what you can do is pin around the outside and then just slowly work your way around the fabric. But you want to try to avoid putting pins into the inside of this PUL as much as possible. Then we match up the sleeve and bodice halves. This is where the notches come in useful. We now have our 4 pieces cut, and it's just dawned on me that because this is going to be turned inside out and I want to actually have this on the outside, so I need to be sewing these together, the shiny sides out, because then they will be on the inside when I flip them over. So after making that little adjustment, we are then able to proceed to the sewing machine to stitch these together. In order to get a crisp finish, I am going to press these with the right sides out before stitching them down to the PUL layer. I shouldn't need to clip them because there is a curvature here, so there is a lot of stretch. In order to get these two to fold well at the seam, it is important to direct the one seam in one direction and then from the other piece direct that seam in the other direction, and that's just going to ensure that they have a very good fit and that when it's folded in half you don't end up with surplus bulk doubled fabric in any one direction. Now I have lined these up as much as I possibly can, but I'm going to have to just hope for the best. And because this PUL fabric likes to slip a bit, I am putting it on the bottom so that it's moved along by the feed dogs rather than having it at the top where it's going to be sliding underneath of the foot. Here we have front and back of the finished items. I apologise about the stitching around the edge. My overlocker is possibly the most temperamental piece of sewing equipment ever invented, and it seems every time I use it I have to recalibrate and readjust the tensions, so there's that. But as far as function goes, this is going to work really well. The top layer is going to be absorbent. The PUL on the inside of this underlayer is going to stop moisture wicking through, and I can't wait to give these a go. Please be sure to head over to my blog where I have made my pattern available for free. And if you do make this, I would love to hear from you with any tips that you might have or any particular successes or failures.